بینەران و بیسەرانی بەڕێز سلااوتان لێ دەکەم. ئەم ڤیدیۆیە بە زمانی ئینگلیسی ڕێکۆرد بووە. بەڵام هەرو جۆرێکە لە وێنەکەدا دەیبینن دەتوانن ژێرنووسی کوردیەکەی بۆ ئاکتیف بکەن و کەڵکی لێ وەربگرن. و هیوادارم لە ڤیدیۆکە کەڵک وەربگرن و هەرو جۆرێک تومانە پێکەوە هەڵ بدەین بۆ گەشەکردن و فێربوون. کاتێکی خۆش.
گەنگێنن بە ڕووناکی لەوێ هەتا چاو لە یەک نانێ.
Let's start?
Sure, let's start.
Yeah. Hello everyone. Welcome to our channel. This is the first episode in English language. I'm Michael Andish, and here is the Asoy Runaki's channel. It's a Kurdish name, I know, but it is the first episode in English language. The purpose of this channel is knowledge sharing and learning from individuals with great expertise and success story. We invite them to share their insight, and through this exchange we aim to learn from each other. So each time we try to talk with other people with different experience. I think it is the key for learn better from each other, and also with this collaborative approach, it is the key for social growth as well. This time cm.com is our sponsorship because they support us for recording this podcast episode. I want to express my gratitude for their support and thank you very much. Okay, let's start, and I want to introduce one of my best colleagues and also friend. His name is Bondi. He's a senior UI UX designer, and we worked together the last about 2 years ago, right? Welcome, Bondi, to our channel, and I'm really happy to have you here in our podcast.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, beautifully said. Also, I didn't know this was the first one in English, so no pressure there. But yeah, great.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, first of all, before start to continue the podcast, it's better to have a introduction of yourself, and then we can continue.
Sure. My name is Bondi Huygers. I've been working in digital for nearly 10 years now. After graduating as a designer, I picked up on software engineering. Started there on a Korean island called Curaçao. But later moved over to Breda to do back-end development, front-end development, and slowly transitioned into having a startup, and then going through the steps to go back actually to my roots of being a designer once again, which I did in my spare time, and I saw that I got a lot of energy from that. So having both the skill sets needed to actually create the products I design. I think that helps me a lot in my day-to-day.
Great. Actually, I'm excited to ask you the first question about your career path as well.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I saw your profile on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
First, you started as a UX intern, and after that, you had a big change towards to being a programmer. Right, and for about 2 years, and then switch back to UX designer, right? And now you are working as a senior UX designer more than 7 years. So before that, you just started being a programmer, right? What happened, Bondi?
Great question. So actually during my education, I was accepted as a designer in Stockholm, Sweden. We had I'm not sure how to say, but we had an internship that you had to kind of partake in a business during the third year, during which I managed to get a position in Sweden, which unfortunately was cancelled just a month before I would go there, because the cousin of the boss needed a job. So I was a bit sad, and went to my internship coordinator. And she kind of felt for me, because I was like, now I need to do a graduation or like an internship in the Netherlands, which seems a little less exciting, because it was also the aspect of going abroad and getting new experiences that appealed to me. She called an old school friend of hers who happened to be the boss of one of the biggest companies in Breda. And they had a spot for me on Curaçao as a backend developer. Okay. So that's where I actually started doing backend development, because to be honest, at the point I wasn't that comfortable with any software engineering skills, but He said like, you want to go to this Caribbean island as a software engineer? Like, sure, I can do software engineering. So I just went there. Both had a great time and worked very hard to kind of make up for my deficit in skill set. And when I went back home, they asked me like, hey, what are you going to do when you're back in Breda? And I answered something like, yeah, I'm gonna work back in this cafe or this pub, because that was very nice. And the boss said, then you're an idiot, because you can program and you can probably earn a lot more by using your software skills, because we want to hire you in Breda. So
Yeah.
I started as a software engineer, and at a certain point, that was working 32 hours a week next to my studies. And at some point I had to graduate, which was in the domain of design. So I got a graduation thesis over at Fingerspeeds, which is an online marketing company, to kind of automate their way of reporting. They would spend a great amount of time just copying data from Google Analytics and AdWords by hand, and then writing a bit of code. So I created something that would automate that flow. And that was like UI UX. And afterwards, I kind of found out like backend is nice, but I prefer something that allows
your
me.
heart was with UX design.
Yeah, so
right.
so moving towards front-end development was a logical step, because it kind of does both things, because you can still have the complexity of programming and the challenges there, and at the same time implement more consumer-facing experiences.
Yeah. What do you think about these approach? Because some people said when you are a programmer, it's better to not doing UI UX, because when you are familiar with the difficulties with some parts of the programming, you will make it easier. Is it correct? Or
yeah, so I get that asked a lot actually, and it's a kind of a double-edged sword. So it's both a strength and a weakness, which if you deal with it well, it will merely focus on the strengths. Because I know one of my deficits is that I already am trying to build the thing in my head when I'm designing it, which can in some form limit your creativity or your exploration. But I notice of myself, so I just go very broad, like I diverge, I think. I'm also a bit of a dreamer, so I just go way wide, and then I just go scratching off the things that I know are either costing too much time, too much money, or not feasible for the project. That said, having a grip on how to code while being a designer is actually a great benefit, while also talking to other designers, working in a project team. So for those of you out there that are programmers and looking to grow towards more UI UX, I can highly recommend doing so, because it definitely has a synergy.
Yeah, and also you can understand what will happen in the next phase, and you can help them as well in this case, right?
Yeah, and specifically also, a lot of designers are focused on visual design. And I believe that people who have like a software engineering background have a great sense of information hierarchy in a system, which is, in my opinion, one of the more important steps while in the earlier phases of a product, which is also, I think, the phase that I excel at, not like in the last bit of refining, but hey, we have this product, it's not working out, we need to do a complete rework. That's where my superpower kind of kicks in,
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine. But let's back to your big change in your career path. Most of the times, if I want something, I just go for it, right? If it doesn't work out, I change my approach, right? I think the key is here to learn how to achieve something. It is really good skill to learn how to achieve, for example, these particular things. Is it something for you in your career path? Because when you changed your your job position to be a programmer, you just went to be a programmer, and after that you figured out, okay, it's not for me. I have to switch back for something that I love it and I want to work with it, or something like that. How did you manage that? And do you agree with this mindset?
With specifically the mindset of just going for something if you want to do it, or
I mean, the skills of achieving something in your life, or learn how to achieve something.
I think achieving goals all starts with tracking your progress, and it doesn't really matter what you want to achieve. Like, honestly, I'm not going to be a professional gymnast at this point, but I could be if I am tracking my progress and dedicate myself to it, even though I'm currently not in the best shape of my life. I would still be able to do it if I put my mind to it. And I think that's something to learn in life, that when you do want to do something, it doesn't come for free. Like, you need to do the steps before that, kind of chop up your process there.
Yeah.
And make it actionable, like make very small steps towards a bigger goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, kinds of evolve process to achieve the final things that you want. And also when you achieve that, you will figure out, okay, I need another things, right? Mm-hmm. So if you don't learn this process, how it works, so it is not possible to go and continue, you know.
Yeah, there's very few people that achieve something great without having a journey towards there.
Yeah, I agree. I want to ask you some question about your expertise, about how do you work in these kinds of the things. For example, as a senior UX designer, you likely engage in frequent communication, right? And also attend numerous meetings, talk to lots of people, stakeholders, and so on, right?
Yeah.
I think it is because you should learn the details of the things that you want to work on it. So how do you manage this part? Because in my opinion, meetings takes lots of energy from someone.
Yeah, I understand, but I think one of the primary skills you need to learn as a UX designer is being sensitive to psychology, like, and knowing what someone is saying without actually them having said anything about it. And that's why usually what works very well for me is, like, in any conversation, is I ask open questions. People love to talk in general. So if you do ask open questions, they'll probably just spill it out. It's most of the time experienced as something pleasurable. Because I don't know if you ever talked to somebody that only rattles on about him or herself. So that's I think how I deal with it. And then when people start talking about it, I mean, I'm a generally interested person in a lot of topics. So I love talking to people, but there is sometimes a conversation that I think, like, maybe we should kind of reframe this or not. But that's where you can also have some skills there to kind of adjust it into a direction that you want. Yeah,
actually, it is the kinds of the skills to manage the meeting that you want to achieve something that you want, right?
Yeah.
How did you learn this skill? It was based on your experience, or what happened? Because when we are going to the meeting, we are not only maybe UX or UI UX designer in the meeting, right? Sometimes we have more people in the different skills. And how did you learn to manage these kinds of things?
Yeah, so part of it comes from the experience of making mistakes and reflecting on what happened and then trying to improve yourself the next time. But partially also in education. I was lucky enough to have an education from CM.com as well last year, which brought me to several European schools. It's like a small MBA program, which was talking about communication, personal leadership, and being more aware of cultural differences in business context. So that kind of also opened up a whole new world for me. To give an example, Um, Something that I wasn't aware of is that some countries in Asia, they appreciate silence, or they utilize silence as a way to kind of internalize and then say something. In the Western world, we're very uncomfortable with silences in general. That's something that I noticed. So when talking to a Korean colleague, when I said something, she had to take about 30 seconds to kind of internalize and then reply. My go-to would be like, okay, is what's happening? But given this fact that you have to give somebody some space to actually think, that kind of helped me in that situation, for example. And
Great.
It actually made me wonder, why are we so uncomfortable with silence in general? And why am I personally trying to fill in any gaps in the silence while, I'm not specifically having a very thorough thought about what I've said?
Yeah. Great. So they call it CMBA, right? The course that you mentioned.
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Yeah, actually CM.com is our sponsorship, so they did a great job in the CMBA, and I think every year they have these planned for their employee, right?
Yeah, it's a yearly course. I think they reframed it this year slightly, but it's a great opportunity to learn a bit more about yourself and about.
Great. Okay, now after the meeting, when you get something that you want, how do you manage the next steps? For example, okay, now you will create an MVP, the rest of the things, how do you manage the rest of
Right, so this is in the context of creating a new project, or
maybe new feature or a new product? Yeah, maybe new product is better.
The honest answer there is it depends on the feature or the project. But sometimes when it's bigger, there's multiple ways to approach. Either you can chop it up into smaller chunks, if it's not feasible to do it at once, and then you take a chunk, you do research, either competitor analysis or just field research, talk to people, document usability testing. It's all about if it's an improvement, a new feature, if you first need qualitative data, quantitative data. Because to me, something changed from being in my design mentality, as in that I don't want to make a design that changes things. I want to make a design that has impact. Because why are you else putting a lot of effort and time and the company's money into something that is just slightly different and maybe a bit better, but I think you should really focus on, okay, what is it exactly that will make a difference and bring value to people's lives, either in workflow or in another form. And then there's the visual part that, I'm really happy with a lot of pixel perfect screens, but, where a lot of people think I'm busy with designing something visually, that's actually in fact just a really small part of my job. I'm really more thinking about what goes on in the user's head. So you're not designing on screen, but you're actually designing in the head.
Yeah.
Like a big part of my job is psychology.
Yeah, nice. So it's a reason we have a really nice product in some companies. They more focus on the UX part and research part to figure out what happened when user using this product, right?
Yeah.
So is it ever happen, for example, you get started to research about the product, you got a project, and or maybe it's a feature for the product. After you research and sharing the experience with a stakeholder, you cancel the rest of the implementation. Is it ever happened? Because
last week.
Oh, really?
We had a major project, and actually it's not entirely true. Like, we're still going to build an MVP for it, but while working on a new feature, I noticed like, hey, it's nice to build a foundation to build something more on this, but it actually doesn't bring any value at this point if in the given scope. so yeah, I can design something, but we already have this thing, so I would just make a different design than this one without research, and this one has been there for years and it's working for people. Yeah, so don't fix what ain't broken in that in that manner. So it took a bit of managing also from my side, because a lot of people were kind of having a lot of business value in that specific feature. But I convinced people that it was rubbish for now,
Yeah.
and that we would pick it up later if we want to have more value there.
Yeah, when it is time for this feature.
Yeah, it was
yeah.
a bit of a difficult conversation because there was also a lot of business investment in there, and as a designer, you're not only talking to developers, you're also talking to product owners, salespeople, CSM.
Yeah.
I think part of realizing who you talk to realizing who you talk is I think one of the great skills to have, and being aware of their contexts, their interests.
Yeah.
Because it helps you give the proper relevance to them.
Yeah, great. So after research, do you have any level or any flow for your research? For example, research about the competitors, research about the society and people, and something like that. Do you have any flow for it?
There are many methodologies you can utilize. Usually, for example, when it comes to usability testing, I try to define some insights based on timestamps, because I usually record these, or hypothesis, because an insight is only an insight if it's proven. So if you have somebody that says this button is not working out for me, or usually says, okay, this is rubbish, then you have to kind of analyze, okay, this part is not working. Then you ask why. Is this a pattern? Do more people see this? I think that's when a hypothesis transforms into an insight, when you can kind of prove that that's done in that way. Usually I try to limit it to to 3 things that I try to write down. 3 is the magic number. Also a good one to remember. Your brain has the easiest time to go through a flow that has 3 options.
Wow.
And you can remember 5 to 7 items max in your short-term memory. So these are kind of, when I say I'm working with psychology more than on the screen, that's because I know these things about you. Just like I know that when you blink your eye, you put your eye upwards.
Cool.
Yeah, so these are hard facts in how your brain works. And actually, I think this knowledge, or these type of things, and certain psychological principles and cognitive biases is very key to your work.
When after your research, you should convince other people to go in this way, right? So there should be trust between stakeholder and the UX designer, right? Because you are talking about based on your experience and your expertise, right?
Yeah.
So if there is no trust, the collaborative will not be kind of successful, right?
Yeah, that's recently I've had a moment that there were some very strong opinions about how things should be designed, and it was kind of going the conversation wasn't going that smoothly. As in, they were very opinionated about their way of working. After doing research and analyzing and having a concept, I got to the optimal workflows, but they couldn't use it yet fully. So they were, and I think that's also a learning point. You have to be careful for who you involve in your decision-making process at which point, and when you want to ask for feedback, because some people are also very visually motivated, or like visually oriented, that they need to see everything and need to use it before they can realize that something is working a certain way. Plus, as a UX designer, you should have some form of owning your expertise. Actually, I think Jacob Nielsen is like one of the founders of Nielsen and Norman Group. Not sure if I got the name right, but anyways, the NN Group. He has this famous group, famous quote, which is called "Don't listen to your users," which is kind of controversial for a UX designer.
And also, it is kinds of mindset from Apple as well, right?
Yeah, like you need to not listen exactly to every word they say, but you need to read between the lines and analyze and understand psychology.
In this case, if you want to share the tools that you are using, for example, for research, for managing your time, for design, can you share then maybe the name of the tools that you are using in your day-to-day work?
Actually, in terms of design, I've been using Sketch a lot. That's because this company adopted that broadly. But we're currently transitioning into Figma, which is becoming more industry standard. Also, Figma, in my opinion, has more options in terms of creating tokens for your design systems. Additionally, I use UXPin, which is a high-fidelity prototyping tool, which basically allows you to do conditional logic on your prototype, so it can actually feel like a true application already, and you can say, okay, if somebody types this in, then do this, for example. I use the Jira suite, so Confluence and such in my team, because that's what my team has adopted. But alternatively, you could use Trello as a way of kind of monitoring your progress. Furthermore, when working with several stakeholders, I like to use Workflow, which is new, so people can do a request. Then it's either blocked or accepted. So I accept, as in I can work on it if I pick it up. And blocked is it's currently not possible to pick this up, or it's delayed or something. Then go into doing, then have a moment to review for people, and then finished.
Sounds great. Thanks for sharing. Now let's switch to the different part of our topic. Let's start with this question. Let's look the past, and please answer this key question. What's something important that, if you understood it like you do now, would have really helped you to grow? You know, if you understood a few years ago when you start your career path, you can see the impact of your growth, and it could be kinds of the concept, the mindset in your life, or something like that. What is the key in this maybe 12 years experience?
Well, that's a banger. There's a lot of learning points, but I think in general that a lot of friction in my career or moments that didn't work out so well, I always attributed them to myself as learning points. But in fact, there's also other people that have their own context, their own problems, their own ways of communicating and learning ways. And you shouldn't always attribute it to yourself, and also not to them, because they have a specific context in which they are, which makes them how they are. I don't believe that anyone is purposely being toxic. They might have political agendas trying to raise themselves in a company, but that's also where you get kind of antennas for at some point. But I always, what I feel like is in a collaborative environment, you should always, even if somebody's kind of lashing out and being a bit of a dick about things, just be empathic as well to that person. And if, take them apart from a group, because group dynamics are sometimes causing people to not be full in themselves. And then I was like, hey, what's up? I noticed that you... and that really helps in a collaborative environment. I picked that up a few times already in the past few years. and really helped like the overall dynamics. So it's also a bit about caring about each other and picking up on any frustrations with your team members. And if you do, then please just go to them separately. Hey, could have a talk. I noticed that. How do you see this?
Yeah.
Not being offensive in that way, but usually there's something behind that. And so
Yeah.
helping these people out and not trying to like having some kind of clash with these people is probably one of the best tips I can give you in your career, because it helps with both your growth path and theirs.
Impact of the softest skills, right?
Yeah.
If you remember, we had a session with Naomi about getting feedback from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it was kinds of really big change in our team. If you remember, after that, the communication and the efficiency of the communication was really nice after that, because we learned each other very well, and also we learned how to give or get feedback, right? Yeah, I think it's soft skill. It is one of the important part in the team communication, I think.
I fully agree. Yeah, there's especially in group context a kind of social barrier
Yeah.
or a barrier to kind of hold your status in a group.
Yeah.
Or I'm not sure if status is the right word, but kind of like your composure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also in my private life, I try to approach people that I notice that have some friction here and there, are lashing out, or and then just try to name the devil in the room. We have this expression in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like pointing out, hey, I noticed this.
Yeah.
I think that works out very well.
Yeah.
Also being respectful to someone else.
Yeah, actually, it is also the next question for me is about this part about which skills do you think if someone has is really helpful for him or her to have a good communication and efficiency in the team?
Wait. So efficiency or communication, those are two different types of things. Because something that I can recommend, by the way, is the book Radical Candor. It's a book talking about challenging someone directly, whilst being also empathic towards that person. So I think in terms of working with people, you should always challenge each other on their ideas. But if things are not working out, you should also be empathic and say, like, hey, what's going on? And I think those two things, and they kind of work in symbiosis, because challenging something is also something. It also depends on your relationship with the person, of course.
Exactly.
But if I tell you, like, Michael, what you delivered now, this is total rubbish. Come on, you can do better.
Yeah.
So that's less constructive than challenging, like, hey, Michael, I see that that you made this. Can you explain to me why you did this? Because I noticed this and this and this.
Yeah.
So it's all about framing. It's saying the same thing. In the case of this is rubbish, I can probably tell it to you because we have a better relationship than people you just met. And there's probably some, some goodwill between us. But in general, try to be constructive. Do challenge people, because if you always say, hey, this looks nice, while you have some resent towards it, or while you think, hey, this can be improved on certain points, try to see how your relationship is with that person and try to address the issue, because it also shows your personal expertise in the matter. And even if it's like incorrect and they can prove you wrong, you learn something. So that's, I think, the best way of working as a team.
Yeah, great. Sounds great. Yeah, I agree. You already mentioned you participated in the CMPA, and also nowadays I think you are working to learn more about the leadership and managing and management stuff and something like that. If you want to talk about the leadership and product management, and do you know what is the good way to being because some people, based on your experience, to being a UX designer and then going to the product manager, it's a good way? Or what is your suggestion here for someone?
Yeah, so there's different forms of leadership. first and foremost, there's personal leadership. You should be the leader of yourself. But in terms of the way that I see leadership, it's two things. It's building a culture. So being a good leader is fostering a good culture within a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, it's getting the most out of each individual and knowing their super skills. So, for example, I know that a colleague of mine, Pascal, he's very good in analyzing something quickly and then making a great structure for an entire database. Then that's his super skill.
Yeah.
Or, for example, another colleague, Quint, he moves into a room and he changes the entire atmosphere positively. So those are super skills that you should be aware of when you manage people and also get the most out of them. Additionally, the way that you work in a team, so challenging people directly and being empathic, are also two skills you should utilize as a leader. I think those are the three most important things, is being aware of people's super skills, their contexts, and it's being a good leader. It's not being busy with you, but with others, with uplifting them, getting the most out of them, making them perform, getting the most out of your team. I think that makes a great leader.
Wow. So you are more involved with people, right? In
Yeah.
this case,
Yeah,
instead of the product or something like that, right?
Of course, there's a sort of certain responsibility of you as a leader, because you are responsible about the performance of a product,
Yeah.
or any project or feature you're working on. But you kind of do that by uplifting people in your team. And there's a certain leaders that, around me. Also, my partner, she is now slowly transitioning into leadership. She kind of has a hard time letting go of being involved in the actual design process. But then again, she has a lot of new challenges to face. Like, she has people to work with, and she has to monitor them. And she currently struggles with, hey, should I be monitoring them, or I don't want to be pushy, but I also don't want to. These are the challenges of transitioning into leadership.
Yeah.
But I think in general, being busy with uplifting others and fostering a culture is like the two key skills you should have there.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I think that based on the things that you mentioned, also, it depends on the culture of the company as well, right?
It does, yeah.
Yeah. For example, I heard some companies they have a camera behind the employee to monitor them.
Sorry.
So it is really, when I heard that, okay, so I think it is not good culture for the company when we are talking about the company.
It was a book by George Orwell, 1984, or?
I'm not sure.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so you were talking about the leadership and also personal growth and something like that, right? So the question is, how do you manage your next step in your life? It could be in your life, in your career path, and I believe it is not. We cannot separate these two things.
I agree.
And also, how do you motivate yourself and your energy level for your next step? Because sometimes we feel tired. How do you manage this part in your life and motivate yourself?
That has many answers, like how you manage your life. Currently I'm in a big home renovation, so my career ambitions are a bit on pause. But before that, I found that having a structure or rhythm in your life, that can be, every day I wake up at 7 or 6 or 8 or 10 or whatever your time schedule is. And then having like a kind of a ritual to do at the beginning of the day, it really helps get you through the day. So mine was, I make up my bed, do either yoga or sports, have some breakfast, and then head over to work. So it kind of has a structure in it that kind of gets me boosted in that day. So you can start small by just making up your bed, or it's also a great talk or book, by the way.
Yeah. So you have a kind of routine for yourself, right?
Yeah, that really helps me in the usually, but currently that's all off the table because I'm full time working and having home renovation. But
Yeah.
it will be back.
Oh, great. And did you have any mentor in your career path?
Currently, yeah. Uh, Erin Weigel, she's a senior design manager at Deliveroo. Uh, you know, we talk bi-weekly, sometimes less frequent, sometimes more frequent, about her challenges, about my challenges, about just general tips for literature, for example, but also about social situations that I sometimes want to, get
Yeah.
feedback on. I think that's in general a good thing, be it somebody with more experience or the same experience or less experience. It's good to have somebody outside of your context to kind of talk to, because it gives a lot of perspective. Like,
Yeah.
you are in a bubble. I'm not currently in this bubble with my team, but there's a lot more along the horizon, and also a lot more outside of your private life.
Yeah.
And it's good to be aware of that and to get some fresh winds blow in from people that are outside of that scope.
You feel when you have a good mentor, it is really helpful for your future growth as well, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, somebody once said, "Learn from the mistakes from others because you're not gonna be old enough to make them all," and that's very true. Like, you should learn from others.
Yeah.
Because why bother making the same mistakes if you can already be told, like, hey, you shouldn't be falling in fire or something, like I never did.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Let's wrap up this episode by the last question is about your suggestion to other people. If you have a suggestion to the people who want to follow this career path,
Yeah.
and what is your suggestion? And after that, please share some books, podcast, movie, everything that you love and you want to share with others.
Oh yeah. I did some during the interview already, but I believe my biggest tip would be is if you are seeking to become a UX designer or this career path, then just go do it and make baby steps, set yourself goals, work towards something that down the line gives you a form of impact. What I see is really with young designers that are uncertain about their skills or if they're good enough, and this kind of imposter syndrome is very common with designers. But I also have that, and the thing is, like, you are good enough and you're improving, and you'll get better if you keep going at it. In addition to that, you can also learn from others and books they wrote. So Erin Weigel is currently writing a book called Design for Impact. I could recommend buying that if she finishes it.
Yeah.
And then there's the Culture Map, which talks about cultural awareness in business sense. What else? I did name a few others already. Value proposition design is something that would be nice to kind of get an idea of. Actually, the only podcast I follow is DMBA, which is a podcast that focuses on making impact as a designer in a business context, and also how to make a living out of design as a freelancer, for example. Talks to, for example, designers at Spotify that said, okay, this is how I grow my income or my wealth while being a designer. It kind of also talks about the business side of all of these things. Because in the end, it's nice if you can do your expertise, but it's also nice if you can pay for your sandwiches in the morning.
Yeah.
But I think those are a few already to mention.
Great. Thanks for sharing. I really appreciate your knowledge sharing and thanks for accepting our invitation for this podcast.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate it and thanks.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really loved it, and what an honor to be among the first English episode there.
Yeah, actually, for me, it was a bit kind of scary because I already know I had lots of maybe grammar mistake in my conversation, but I'll just go for it because I want to learn and improve.
And that's the way to improve.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you again, and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. And if anyone's listening in, feel free to reach out and ask me some questions. Yeah,
Yeah, they can find you on LinkedIn, right?
they can. Yeah,
Yeah, great. Thank you, and have a great day.
you too.
Göngenin ba runaci Lewi hata